Hi, my name is Julie, and I'm a therapist at Shelva, and I'm very excited to welcome you to our first ever virtual community education event. Today, we're going to be talking about how to help a friend who you suspect is in an abusive relationship. Before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about Shalva. Shalva is a not for profit Jewish domestic violence agency that supports anyone who self identifies as Jewish and self identifies as a woman who is experiencing domestic violence or is healing from domestic violence. We support women through counseling, supportive services, and community education events. All of our counseling services are totally free and completely confidential. Unlike other agencies, our counseling services are also long term. We see people for as little as 3 sessions, and some clients we have been seeing for over 5 years. It depends on the need of the client. I want to just put forth a disclaimer that I will be using the pronoun she. And the reason I'm going to be using the pronoun she is because Shalva, again, primarily serves anyone who self identifies as a woman. And because the majority of people who report domestic abuse in the relationship are women. We do acknowledge that domestic violence affects men and people who identify as non-binary, but today we will be using the pronoun she. The good news is that Shalva is open for business and that we continue to see our clients remotely. Our 24-hour hotline is also available at all times during the day. Although we function as a Jewish agency, we don't turn anyone away. We do our best to help anyone who calls looking for help, and we try to connect them to the most appropriate resources. And that includes men and any individual who calls from a different faith tradition or non-faith tradition. Shalva, the mission of Shalva is that creating a community that is strong and peaceful and where every woman feels safe emotionally, spiritually, physically, psychologically, and sexually in her home and in her relationship. So right now, one of the reasons we're doing this is obviously this is an unprecedented historical time. And we understand that it is always difficult if you have a loved one or a close friend who you suspect is in an abusive relationship, but especially during this time when we are all so isolated and unable to see each other, it is even more challenging if you are worried about a friend and worried that they're in a relationship where there's abuse. We're all feeling the effects of the COVID-19 crisis. But for women who are in abusive relationships, the stress is even more overwhelming because they're oftentimes at home with their abusers, and there is no escape from the dynamics that play out in those relationships. So we're going to talk today a little bit about how you can support the women that you love, who you wonder and suspect or might even have real evidence are being harmed by their intimate partner. Before I begin, I just want to give you a brief definition of domestic abuse, how we define it at Shalva. We define domestic violence as a systemic pattern of power and control for the sole purpose of manipulating a partner in an intimate relationship. The tactics used by abusers vary. We often think that domestic violence is just physical, but in fact, many people don't experience physical abuse in the relationship, in an abusive relationship. What's more common is emotional abuse. There's also emotional and psychological abuse are highly tied. There's financial abuse, sexual abuse, and spiritual abuse. And oftentimes women will experience all of the above, some of the above, or a combination at the same time in the relationship or at different points in the relationship. Domestic violence does not know race, ethnicity, class, or economic background. It crosses all lines. And so it's very important that the Jewish community understands that domestic violence is something that we have to deal with in our own community. 1 in 4 women will be affected by domestic violence in her lifetime. So that means that Jewish women, women from the Reform movement, women from the conservative movement, from the Reconstructionist movement, from the Orthodox and modern Orthodox movement, are all vulnerable and vulnerable to being victims and hopefully survivors of domestic violence. And we as a Jewish community must reconcile with abuse in our own communities. So we're going to start with answering some questions that some people have posed, individuals have posed about how do you best assist a friend during this very challenging time in all of our lives. And the tips we're going to give are not just, again, they are targeted towards this crisis, but they're general. And we do understand, just want to put it out there, how complicated and painful this is to have a friend or a loved one who's in a situation like this. And we recognize that it's not easy to talk to a friend and to be there. So we want to give you some helpful hints. So the first question is, what do I do if I suspect a family member is being abused? Well, that is, for anyone in that situation, that is quite painful. So the most important thing, if you suspect a family member is being abused or a close friend in these times especially, is to let that person know that you love them and you care about them and you will be there for them no matter what choices that they make. One way to start the conversation, if you are concerned, is to notice some observations. Say that you are concerned, that you've noticed some things. Ask them how they're doing. It's important that you listen without judgment. Women in these situations feel blame themselves often for the abuse. They often feel ashamed and embarrassed because of the abuse. So offering a sympathetic, compassionate, non-judgmental, non-critical ear is essential. It's essential that you do this in a way that provides that encourages your family member to continue coming to you and opening up to you, so they feel safe to do so and don't feel pushed into making a decision that they might not feel comfortable with yet. And that's one of the hard parts of having a family member, loved one in this situation, because you might have opinions about where they should be in their life and they're not ready to make those decisions yet. The next question is, what if my friend says everything is fine and they get defensive about their partner? This happens quite often. The dynamics of an abusive relationship are quite complex and complicated. And oftentimes women feel protective and defensive over their partner, even their abusive partners. And as I mentioned earlier, there's lots of shame, lots of guilt, and they might not feel safe, literally safe, disclosing information to you about the situation. And they might want to pretend that everything is fine because it might be too painful to say otherwise. And so with that, patience is key, and letting the person know that you are there for them no matter what, reminding them of their positive attributes, following their lead and not pushing. We as therapists don't give advice, and we recommend that you also don't give advice, and that you continue to just be a compassionate, supportive presence in their life, recognizing how challenging it is to be in an abusive relationship where one person is trying to exert power and control over you. And so the last thing you need is another human being trying to kind of steer you one way or the other. But it will happen. People do get defensive. And in that case, you can back off and stop talking about the problem. But let your friend or loved one know that you are committed to them and care for them. But that is something that will happen. And don't be scared if that does happen. It's kind of part of, it's part of the process. What if my friend, the next question is, what if my friends tell me they are scared and things aren't okay? So if that happens, the thing to tell them is, to make sure that when they're talking to you, ask them, are they safe to be speaking to you at that moment? You can find out from them how unsafe they are. If they feel so unsafe that they shouldn't be in their home, you can brainstorm with them and ask them, do they need help finding resources to leave? That's something you can do. The other thing you can do is to strongly recommend that they reach out to a domestic violence agency for assistance. And at the same time, we urge you to reach out to places like Shalva for help and support around issues such as these, such as when a friend says they are not safe. There are professionals who can help walk you through this and help walk your friend or loved one through this as well. If you ever, though, feel that someone is unsafe to the point that you're worried that their lives or their children's lives are in danger, follow your gut and call the police. Right now, hotels are currently providing rooms in Chicago. So there are shelters that are open. There are places to go, and you can be a resource for your friend in, again, calling us and asking Shalva for help. How do you find shelter for a friend who is unsafe? Safety is absolutely and always our priority. And we can help assist you in how you help a friend make a safety plan. You can call the Illinois Domestic Hotline to find out more about hotel rooms that are available for women who are leaving their abusers. Right now, the COVID-19 crisis doesn't mean that women have to stay, and you can offer hope and let people know that there is another life outside of their relationship. And again, if you're feeling overwhelmed, though, you could please, again, reach out to Shalva, because we are here to provide those resources for you and to walk you through the process. The next question is, what if I don't live in Chicago? Can I still call? Absolutely. You can still call. We have a 24-hour hotline that is staffed by our therapists. And many of our clients have family and loved ones who live out of state, and they often call to ask for support around how they can best be there for their loved one. So we do talk to people from out of state on the phone. We are available to people from all over the country. In terms of actually seeing clients in the office or remotely ongoing clients, we don't do out of state, but we will surely always talk to the people who are important in their life. And our 24-hour hotline, again, is available to anyone, and we staff that and walk people through whatever situation they are and give them the necessary resources based on the state they're in. So are there any other questions at this time? We just have a question. What if I hear a fight in my apartment building? If you hear, if you hear a fight in your apartment building, again, this is another thing where you have to kind of trust your gut. If you hear anything physical, someone being thrown into a wall, someone being slapped, punched, excessively violent language, people being called out on their names, call the police. It's not in your best interest to get involved. The police are still working, and you can reach out to the police and let them know what is happening, and they'll assess the situation. I want to remind people you can type in questions into the question and answer section, and I can respond. I think the most important thing to know is that your friend or loved one in these situations needs to be validated, needs to be told that what is happening to them is not their fault, that there is no excuse for abuse. There never is. They're not to be blamed. And they need to be listened to, again, without judgment, and to try to withhold our own feelings about the situation and meet our family, our loved ones where they're at, knowing how difficult that is, because we want people to be safe and to be healthy and to be at peace. But everyone's journey is different. And if you already are feeling, if there's already control in your relationship, then it's even that much more important to know that people have the right to determine the choices they make in their lives. There's a question. So what if you're worried about reaching out to your friend because you know their partner listens and they're always around? That's a really great question, and especially pressing at this time. If that is the case, then you have to be very careful about what you talk to your friend about. If you suspect that it's not safe for them to talk about their relationship because someone is listening to them, their partner, their abusive partner, then stay off the topic and just reassure and remind your friend that you're there for them and that you love them, and keep in contact with that person. You can ask, where are they? Is this a good time to speak privately? But again, if you suspect that they say yes and you're not sure if they're safe, then veer on the safe side, and again, continue to validate, listen without criticism, and support. But that's an excellent question, and it's a complicated one. Any other questions? Anyone from the group have any questions right now? Again, we recognize that, someone asked about confidentiality. It's important to let your friend or loved one know that your conversations with them are confidential. As I stated earlier, disclosing information about your your intimate life to someone when your intimate partnership is unhealthy and there's abuse takes a lot of courage and strength. And so assuring that person that it's confidential is very, very important, because it takes a tremendous amount of courage to disclose that kind of information to someone and to share something so private and personal. The next question is, when they call Shalva, will it be confidential? Do you need to give your name? So when you call Shalva, everything is strictly confidential. We will ask for your name. You have every right to say no. So we will not press you on that. But every conversation we have with each individual is completely confidential. We'll never confirm or deny that someone has either come to see us in person or who has called our hotline or our office. And in that way, we assure the privacy of our clients. Our location is also private and only given out when someone comes in for an actual meeting with a therapist or with a legal liaison or with another staff member. So yes, we are fully committed to confidentiality, knowing that the situations we're dealing with are oftentimes unsafe, and that people who are looking to exert power and control often control the movement and the actions of the person they're with. So we try to be as safe as possible to protect the safety of our clients. Any other questions? So it looks like we're at 20 minutes. If there aren't any other questions, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to our first ever virtual community education event. We thank you so much. Again, Shalva is here. We are always available 24 hours a day. Please do not hesitate to call. If you are in need, a friend, if you are worried about a friend, we will guide you through the process. We are here to help. And we will be here throughout the crisis and hopefully back in the office when it's safe. So thank you so much. And I wish you all good health, peace, happiness, yes, just especially good health during this time. And may we one day live in a world that is free of abuse.